And welcome to another installment of Introduction to Philosophy. And I'm going to be going from we just did Descartes, of course, and I'm going to be moving on from him and doing Descartes. I will be skipping Spinoza. Once I finish the intro course, I will probably at some point do a modern philosophy course, in which I will go very much in depth into all these people, including Leibniz, Spinoza, and Malebranche, and a lot of other people as well, and basically everybody who had a part in this whole modern period. So there will be a modern philosophy course beyond this. However, this is just the modern philosophy. This is the introduction to philosophy course, which is just trying to acquaint you with some of these people and some of these concepts. In the whole course so far, we've done the pre-Socratics, we've done Plato and Aristotle, and we have given you an intro to modern philosophy itself, and we've done Descartes' Meditations, and I also right now I want to do Leibniz. I'll do two videos about Leibniz. One, this one is going to be just about his many principles. He has many principles, which, and I'm doing these principles because they're good for you to think about, and they have a big place in his philosophy. Unfortunately, for our purposes in this course, Leibniz's philosophy cannot be summarized. It can't be systematized. It can't really be. I mean, he doesn't have one system of thought that I can just sort of, I can just like digest for you and put it in one simple little parcel. A lot of philosophers are like that. Leibniz is not one of them. Leibniz was a scientist and a philosopher. He rivaled with Sir Isaac Newton. They both had big parts in inventing differential and integral calculus. So if you take calculus, Leibniz was one of the two main people who invented it. Newton was the other. People normally these days credit Newton for it, but if people are in philosophy, they're going to know a lot more about Leibniz. Where if you're just in mathematics and science, you'll just be giving credit to Newton. All right, so in this first video, it'll be the principles. He has a couple of books which are very important. He has correspondences with Arnauld and Debos, and he has, but his two main works people really think about are his Monadology and his discourse on metaphysics. His discourse on metaphysics is very metaphysical and has a lot to do with God. Another work that is very important of his is the Theodicy, and the Theodicy is very important when it comes to optimism, and optimism is something that I will discuss in this video. So, these principles are discussed in the discourse. They're in the Monadology. In the second video, I'll discuss all about the Monadology. And I have a video which I've done a couple years back, which was it's a much bigger in-depth discussion of the Monadology than this or the next video will be. But because this is a intro course, and I want things to be very cursory and just to acquaint you with these concepts rather than just throw you into them. This is an introductory thing, and it's not a thing where we're gonna be delving deep in depth with these things. However, if you want to, go into and learn more about this, about Leibniz or any of the people that I discuss, you can go right ahead and do that. And also the people that I'm omitting from this course, you can go ahead and look them up too. So on with these principles that Leibniz has. The first one has to do with contradiction, and this is pretty simple. It's just that if something is true, the negation of that is false, and if something is false, the negation of that is true, and that's kind of based on on what it means to be true and false. And Leibniz has a certain logic here, which he uses a little bit here and there. And secondly, we have the identity of indiscernibles. And if you take a metaphysics class, if you are a philosophy major, I'm pretty sure that any college that you go to will require you to take a metaphysics class. The identity of indiscernibles is where we have X and Y, two distinct things, and if they have different properties, if these two things X and Y are distinct and they have different properties here, then they cannot be said to be identical. However, if X and Y are not distinct and they have the same properties, then they are identical. So this is a big kind of a issue here in metaphysics. And if you Google the identity of indiscernibles, you will kind of in modern day, like these days, and the past 50 years, and even before that, but there's a lot of discussion in the past 50 years or so about the identity of indiscernibles. And this principle is often called Leibniz's law. It's very, very important if you're doing metaphysics of any kind. Now on to the second one. We have the principle of sufficient reason. This is another very, very important concept in philosophy. You will find it in tons of modern philosophy. You'll find it in Hume. You'll find it in Descartes a little bit. You'll find it in Leibniz, of course. That's why we're talking about it. You will find it in some 19th century philosophers, including Arthur Schopenhauer. It's very, very important. And the principle of sufficient reason is just this: that there is no true or existent thing or fact without there being a sufficient reason why that is the case, and not otherwise. So basically, anything that occurs or anything that is, there has to be some reason for it. Reason for it to be the case, and why not otherwise. And this can relate to causality of events, or origination of things, or whatever. Okay. Now, the principle of sufficient reason is very important in philosophy, and if you Google that, you'll have a more in-depth look at it. Then you'll find it here. Sorry, it's really hot in here. Imagine that it's almost October and it's still hot. Next, we have the pre-established harmony, and that you will find a lot in the Monadology itself. It's a short work. However, it's has a lot of substance to it, and it will take a while to get through without losing anything. Now, pre-established harmony is, and this is a quote right from Leibniz: "The appropriate nature of each substance brings it about that what happens to one corresponds to what happens to all the others." And this is things are all connected in this pre-established harmony, and things act indirectly with each other and not directly. So, as we find in the Monadology, there is this pre-established harmony where, and there's this Leibnizian causality where anything that happens in this unextended world of monads, everything is affected by any single event. If you do something, you're affecting something somewhere along this spectrum. And it's just saying that when you do something, you are indirectly affecting something else in this pre-established harmony of this monadic universe that Leibniz has. And Leibniz has a idealism too, and I'll explain that in the next video here. Now I have the law of continuity, where it just says that he has a quote in Latin, which basically just means that nature does not make jumps, where things are continuous in some way or other. Now here's a big one: optimism. Optimism has to do with God and how God chooses the best and how God is perfect. God is omniscient, omnibenevolent, omnipresent, and he has aseity also. Optimism is something that comes from the theodicy and a little bit on the discourse on metaphysics, where there is optimism in that God always chooses the best, always, and Leibniz will also give proofs for God's existence also. And finally, we have the idea of plenitude, where in the best of all possible worlds, and the whole idea of modal realism came from Leibniz. If you take a metaphysics class, you will learn about modal realism, and modal realism means that it's a kind of a difficult thing, where you're arguing that there is a reality, that there is objective reality, with the fact that there are a plenitude of possible worlds. So Leibniz is saying with this is that the best of all possible worlds could actualize every genuine possibility, and the best of all possible worlds contains these possibilities, and this also pertains to nature's perfection. So, I did this part mainly to acquaint you with some very common. A few of them were very, very important and very, very common in philosophy itself, to sort of acquaint you with these things. And in the next, I'll discuss the monadology very, very briefly, to try to give you an idea. And if that whole idea excites you, then you can buy the book, and you can look into it more in depth than what I'm going to give you right now. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next installment.